Welcome back to We Bought a Mic. This is our ongoing coverage of the Florida Film Festival, which wrapped last week, but we've got another interview with another winner from the festival, Tatti Ribeiro. Her movie, Valentina, won a special jury award. Is that right, Hunter?
Yes, that's correct.
And it is, yet again, I'm going to say, this is another genuinely really good movie. It's very funny. It's very poignant. You're going to want to hear more about. Hunter, General, what did you want to say before we get into it?
So I really love this movie. This was one that we talked about very briefly at our first kind of check-in of the Florida Film Fest, and it has remained one of my favorites of the film festival. It exists in a fun place in between fiction and nonfiction, where we have Keyla Monterroso Mejia, who plays Valentina. She is the only true actor in this film. Otherwise, we are seeing real people. In some cases, Kayla's real life family, and in many other cases, actual just El Paso citizens. The logline of this movie is a series of bureaucratic mishaps plagues Valentina as she tries to tackle a simple to-do list at the El Paso-Juárez border. All the people, locations, laws, conversations, cops, priests, and city officials in the film are real. Valentina is not. I think that is kind of the perfect thing to describe what this movie is. It's very funny. It is like, I would compare it mostly to like something like a Linklater slacker film, but it with the backdrop of the El Paso Juarez border and of young woman just trying to live her life one hustle at a time.
Yeah, exactly. And so, in our interview with Tatti, there's a ton of interesting, sort of political adjacent discourse to get into involving the movie. But the main thing that I want to emphasize before getting into it is that this is a comedy. It's hilarious, largely because Keyla Monterroso Mejia is a star and she's interacting with just real people, some of her own family members, and then a ton of just real people that they met that day, while filming. And she is so magnetic. So funny. It is a breezy watch, even though it has a lot of profundity in how simple it is. It's just about someone, struggling to make their way through a day. It's a really great balance of tones. I'm excited for wherever this movie ends up, because it's going to end up somewhere. It's screening at a ton of different festivals right now. The reception is almost exclusively positive. Like it's really hard to come away from this movie not smiling. So I guess with that said, let's just get straight into our interview with Tatti Ribeiro for Valentina.
Delighted to be joined today by the award-winning filmmaker behind Valentina, who just won the special jury award at this year's Florida Film Festival. How are you doing today? Oh, please introduce yourself.
I'm Tatti Ribeiro. I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us. We caught you. This is some post-festival coverage that we're doing here. I'm talking with everybody else who didn't get a chance to chat to during the fest, and I'm so glad that we were able to grab you, because this is one of my favorites from this year's festival, Valentina. Do you want to say congratulations on your film? It was very exciting to see this get recognized by the jury. Can I get a little bit of a background from you, because this is your first feature that you've done writing and directing. So how did you kind of come about this story, wanting to tell this? We'll kind of get into it, how this blends a little bit of the fiction and nonfiction and the story that you're telling. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah, I have both like a film and journalism background. I went to film school and sort of worked in, traditional like narrative comedy for the beginning of my career. And then I made a pretty hard pivot into journalism. Valentina really is sort of like a melding of those worlds. Like you sort of briefly mentioned, it's a hybrid. So the character of Valentina is played by an actor, but she's the only actor in the movie. So the rest of the world is real. I had spent, a good portion of the last 10 years really in and out of El Paso doing a lot of immigration reporting. And I love it there. I feel like everybody's like, you're the only person who loves El Paso. I love El Paso. And I just made a lot of friends there, and I had a really good time there. And it was sort of in contradiction to a lot of the work I was publishing or working on, which immigration is sort of bleak in the United States, and it's always been that way, or at least for a very long time, it's been that way. And yeah, I wanted to figure out how to make something that was reflective of how I felt doing the work and like what my relationships looked like and, the people I was around and who I was talking to, rather than sort of piling on to this sort of conversation that, I don't think is like helpful. And, really that is just sort of like full of like sad statistics. So Valentina is sort of, yeah, an attempt at that.
Your star is Keyla Monterroso Mejia. She has like a huge background in comedy, obviously, because like you're saying, like she's the only actor in the film, just playing off a million different real people. So, I mean, it's like it's miraculous, like how good she is at this. She's like a skeleton key for the whole movie, because she's so disarming. She's very conversational. How did you get linked up with her? Like, was she from stage one a part of this process? Because it's hard to imagine anyone else doing this.
She was early for sure. I had the idea for it and, we shot a lot and cut together sort of like a sizzle. We had a deck, all the sort of like traditional ways of pitching a movie, a really tight outline and solid outline. And then, she was really new. I saw her in an episode of Curb, which was her first job. And I thought, I need to meet that person. She's, obviously like comedically gifted, but more important than that, she can like hang in an improv setting, which was obviously on top of it really important. So yeah, I like found her manager and I just like cold emailed and they were nice enough to say, sure, we could set up a lunch. And, she was very early in her career. So I think now probably it's harder to get a lunch with Keyla, but, at the time, yeah, they were, I drove and met her for like dim sum or something. And we just really got along really like immediately. And a lot of this is about like the dynamic between her and her dad in the film is like about like me and my dad's. It's like I have immigrant parents and it was very personal. And then very quickly, we just found out like, oh, our dads are the same. There's a lot of overlap here. And once she was sort of like down and understanding the process and like understanding like what it was, we, tried to play to her, talents and her skills. She's a lot nicer than me and people treat her a lot nicer than they treat me in the world. And so we adapted to that, to that spirit and like her lens and, yeah.
So was when you were originally constructing this film, did you always kind of have the idea of like you want her to bring her actual family in here? Because we see her with her biological father and with her brother, and it feels so real. Was that always kind of something from the jump that you wanted to bring into the story?
No, her family, I like met her family. I started like hanging out with her and really trying to like understand her again so you could like write better to her tone and to her sense of humor and to her skills and her interests and all of these things. And then her dad's like a barber, like he is in the movie, and so we like went and hung out there and I met her brother and their dynamic is so beautiful and special and they're so funny together and like lovely together that sort of slowly as we were like going and I got more comfortable with her, I was like, would you like maybe let your dad be in this movie with you? She was like, I don't know that they're going to want to do that. Like, and then they were down and that was, great. They flew into El Paso. We shot them probably in like 3 days, all of their scenes, pretty quick. But, yeah, they just had such like a nice natural rapport. Once you see it, you're just like, oh, that's like magic. So she was generous in letting them participate.
So what was it like? Because I'm assuming that there had to be some kind of there was a script that was written for this. Was there just a lot of kind of improvising for just like, no, we wouldn't kind of have that relationship together. This feels more genuine? Like some of the dialogue, was that more improvised? Was there rehearsal that was involved here for like how we want to further the plot, but maybe keep the realism in these interactions that we see Kayla have?
No, there's no script. There's just an
Oh,
outline. So
okay.
the outline, it's like, heavier, I would say, more heavy-handed than like a normal outline you would have for a movie that would end up having a script. But no, the outline was really sort of the larger plot points, like the city council of it all and those things. But even that we had to change. Like, we weren't there during an election. It was written to happen during an election cycle, but there was no election when we were shooting. So that sort of went out the window. And yeah, we just like adapted. So there was always sort of like this journey and certain things I wanted her to do or things that I thought would be funny. But no, the way we like kept track of things, it was a very long editing process, as you can probably imagine. But
Yeah.
the way we kept track of things is I would have like two like index cards in my pocket every day. One was sort of where we were like in the story, like, or should be in the story, like emotionally and sort of the things that we needed to talk about. And then another one would be like jokes that I wanted to like get off essentially. So Valentina has her phone in like every scene, and it's because like I'm, hidden somewhere listening to Kayla on headphones, watching a monitor, and just texting her like, try this, like in that diner and being like, tell them you want a BBL. And then she's being like, I want a BBL. So it was a lot of texting and, there were certain, yeah, again, like jokes and little things that we thought would be funny. And then it was sort of like the puzzle piece of like, when do we pull those triggers and, when do they feel like that would be funny, that somebody would respond well to this or not. Yeah.
Wow.
So
I mean,
again,
that's such a fascinating way to construct a film. Like it feels so like uh, so against the norm of what you would expect for even going into something like this where you're having some actors and some non-actors. Usually there's at least a little bit of like a no, we really want to hit these plot points, like make sure that you're hitting these kind of marks. So are you saying like were there any points while you were making the film that you kind of felt like you needed to coax a reaction from some of the regular people that you're having here?
No.
Oh, that's great. I mean that, and I think that you do kind of feel that in the movie. That feels just real, feels all
yeah,
genuine.
it has a lot of, yeah, exactly. You can tell it wants to feel genuine. Also, speaking toward, how you say you love El Paso, that shows up as well, just in the way it's shot. It feels very lovingly shot. It doesn't have this stupid, border town yellow filter or anything on
I
it.
know I had this idea that I tried so hard to figure out how to do, which the opening sequence of the movie, they're walking from Mexico into the United States and it's all in real time. It's a one shot. And I really wanted to like open like in yellow and then like have that filter fade like when they got to the
Hmm.
US. But in color, it never like landed. People were like, what's happening with the color? And I was like, obviously this is a joke, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
it
Did you
wasn't
shoot
landing.
it on film?
No,
It looks so filmy. That actually shocks me.
that's
So what? Yeah,
Dante. That's
really.
my colorist. He's very, very talented. We wanted it to, all of the aesthetic choices, like uh how we shot it. We don't do this like mockumentary zoom thing. Like
Hmm.
we are in a lot of like close-ups and medium close-ups. We're shooting on like super long lenses. We're pretty far away, honestly, from like what's actually happening. Um, but I wanted it to feel like a narrative movie. I wanted to like lean out of a documentary feel.
Mhm.
Um, and with color, like that was it's a choice. Uh, the way that it's colored and the texture of it. And, we played with printing it to film. We played with like adding film grain in a bunch of different ways. It was like a pretty technical, long process to get it to look how it looks. And yeah, Chris Ripley, my DP, and Dante, the colorist, are all to credit there. I mean, yeah, we just really wanted to lean into something that felt like stylized and narrative and not doc.
Right,
Mhm.
right. And I think that comes through, and it's interesting because it feels not doc, but also it is existing in this interesting place between fiction and nonfiction. I mean, you even intercut like actual news broadcasts and politicians speaking. I think it's uh, poignant that you get both Republicans and Democrats both kind of speaking out against immigration, kind of broken in between this wider narrative that we have of Valentina just like kind of like hustling through her day. So it creates this space where the film is not necessarily political, or maybe the film is political, but the Valentina character is not political. So
Yeah, for
could you
sure. I
say
mean,
yeah, a little bit about
don't
like
know
what
any
was that
poor
kind of like
people,
the
they're not really like having the time to like linger on Twitter and talk politics. It's like they have a fucking job to do,
exactly.
And,
Yeah.
for the majority of my life, my dad is, he grew up in a military dictatorship in the 50s and 60s in Rio. He's Brazilian. And I don't know if you guys saw Secret Agent, but like that was his life.
Wow.
Growing up, like he's a contractor, he's a carpenter, he's like a musician for fun. He's a lot of things. But I like was like, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. Like I was always like, every take that you have, I'm like, what are you talking about? And then I became an adult and I was like, oh, no, you understand politics because you lived politics. You understand, when he's talking about like, well, the CIA did that in Latin America. I was always like, you sound crazy. And, you come into adulthood and for me anyways, I start working in journalism and, I have the privilege of going to college and being around a lot of people who are sort of like capital A academics, who talk about all of these things in like a really academic way. And that is just like not the reality of like the people living these things that they're talking about. And El Paso really felt like that to me. It's such a working class place. It has the lowest voter turnout in the United States. It's like less than 4%. It's like, all of these things you're thinking like, when I was covering, I'm jumping around a bit, but when I was like covering the first Trump election in like 2015 and into 2016, I was working in El Paso a lot. And I kept hearing like teenagers tell me they were going to write in an alt candidate instead of Hillary Clinton because for a bunch of different reasons. And I remember thinking like, oh my God, she's going to lose. And these kids who live on the border, who have a fence running through their backyard, who are going to be deeply impacted, like don't care. And you would talk to them and they're like, nothing changes here. That's like up there. You're like in a different world. You're not understanding what's happening. It was a really honestly like sort of like humbling experience doing a lot of that coverage. Cause yeah, I mean, we just think about things in a different world when it's not literal. It's like one thing to have these debates and arguments, and align yourself sort of morally with what you think is like right. And it's a different thing to, I think, really understand that mostly things aren't changing for poor people. Mostly things aren't changing for immigrants. And that's like a different thing to reckon with.
I think it's really well said. It's easy to kind of put yourself in that like liberal coastal elite bubble of just like if you just like, it's the whole like just vote blue and like everything's going to be fine. It's like, well, actually not. Like for a lot of these people, they've had these problems like regardless for who's in the office. We're talking about something that's like much deeper and in a lot ways a lot more bleak because it feels like nothing ever is really changing.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about like generally that bleakness is obviously it's a shadow over the whole film, but what is profound and then also very funny about the movie is that you're watching someone deal with like a bunch of really stupid minutia, like little bullshit things that just happen in life, particularly in a city like this when you're in poverty. So when you're shooting and when you're trying to strike a particular tone, did you end up with footage that you thought leaned too far one way or the other, where you're like, okay, this scene might be too goofy or this scene might be too bleak and you're trying to end up in the middle? Or how did you sort of like narrow down on the exact vibe?
No, I think I was just always like going for the joke, like mostly like when we're looking through footage, I'm just looking, like every scene, basically, there's like 50 alts for that scene, you know? So like in the diner where she's talking to those guys and they end up talking about a VBL, you know, we were sat in that diner for like 3 or 4 hours, and Keyla was just there. We sort of planted mics under the counter. The cameras are like tucked into the kitchen, and my producers are standing outside basically telling anyone who comes in, like, there's cameras in there. We're filming a documentary about El Paso. Just don't look at them. Carry on with your day. And Keyla's so unassuming and like not famous then, especially, that, you know, they go in and they sit down for breakfast and she just like strikes up a conversation. So, you know, there's like 15 different conversations she had. And that one was like very obvious. Like we were like, well, this is like the magic of it. That was actually the first scene we shot. But yeah, sometimes it was just like this person said something funny and surprising. These are the people to use. So we just kind of tried to go where, tried to land on, I think for me, like what was the most like humorous.
I think that all comes through. Like I know we talk a lot about the politics because that is kind of just something that is the backdrop of this whole world that you're building. But really, vibe wise, it's closer like a Richard Linklater, like a stoner comedy and like a slacker comedy. Even though also at its core, there's somebody who's like hustling through to like get through their day. Now, granted, it's like, well, I'm hustling so that I can like get money to go out and like drinks and like party it up and kind of live my life because I'm still like a person in my 20s. Yeah. Yeah. You gotta do that. Gotta let off steam somehow. But I really love the motif that we keep going back to of just the bank account going up and then back into the negative and then slightly more up again and then we're gonna go back down. That's a great little piece to add in there.
Thank you.
So when you're sort of formulating a movie like this, what were your reference points of, you know, maybe existing movies, at least in terms of trying to put together a process or a feel for how you were shooting it? Were you looking at any other existing films?
Like, yes and no. I mean, when I was pitching it, I would say like it's Borat, but if Linklater did it, you know, I would be like,
oh my God. Like I'm buying immediately if you tell me that.
Yeah. Well, everyone was like, that doesn't make sense. Good luck. But you know, yeah, the conceit of like it's one person and it's real. It was really hard to convince anybody that was a good idea. Like even Keyla was like, what? How is this going to work? And I guess I didn't fully know. I just like believed that it would. You know, I live in LA. I drove from LA to El Paso because we needed my car like during the shoot. So I drove there and I was like hysterical. I was crying the whole time. And I remember like calling my friends being like, have I even been to El Paso? Like, do I even know anyone there? Like, what am I doing? I just convinced all these people to like do this thing with me. And, you know, like the crew, these are all my friends who like are so talented. And it was, you know, we've all worked together for a long time, but I was asking for favors for sure. I was like, well, I have no money and I have a little money, but like no money. And this is like beneath your pay grade. And we're doing this quick. And like, you have to live in a house with each other. And like Keyla and I, like me, Keyla and Noelle, like lived in a house together. You know, it's like, I've been like doing her laundry every day. It's like, it was an abnormal setup. And I was really nervous that it wouldn't work. I have no idea. I had only been on like traditional narrative sets where it's like lighting and you're turning around and blah, you know, we shot on 2 cameras. So like we weren't setting up and turning around or on like really traditional documentary stuff, which, you know, you're shooting for like years and years and years and years, waiting for a story to unfold in front of you. And hoping that something interesting happens and you're like catching it. And this is like a weird in between. The saving grace was that like I had been to El Paso before, and not only had I been there before, these people are like most of the people in this are my friends and people I knew, and you know, they were very generous in return. And I think that's like, you know, where the like magic of it was. And then Keyla is just like a star, so she made it so easy for me.
Yeah, I think that's you can feel that the small crew kind of come through in the how like fun it seems like it was a movie that was very fun to make. I'm sure it
Yeah.
was stressful also in itself,
No, it
but it
was
feels
fun.
like yeah, it feels like you can feel like friends palling around. Like I one of my favorite moments in the film is what we kind of talked about earlier, whenever she is going out for the night with her friend who's coming in town from Austin.
Yeah.
And one of the great jokes is just like, oh, look at the artwork. It's AI. It's a great little joke that's in there.
Yeah.
I don't
He
know if that was a phone texting the joke to send that one
No,
during the
that's his
scene,
real
but it was
album cover, and he's just funny as hell. That's my friend Mac, and he was living in Austin at the time of uh, the Democratic primary debate. And he was like making this joke about Kamala. And I was like dead. I was like, this is so funny. And it worked out to cast him because he was in Texas and like all these things. And I wanted her to sort of have like a feeling of a friend that knew her, that could ask some questions and like, place her like something that was like slightly more controlled. But he is being himself. Like he was like really drinking all night. Like when we do Q&As, people are like, you're so funny at acting. He's like, I was lit. I like was just like going out and they were like filming. And that's what was happening. He was really just like he's like the party. He's like such a good time and like deeply, deeply funny. And so I could kind of just relax with him and her. And then they had like immediate chemistry and were great. So,
Mhm. So considering generally your background, like you said, you're coming from journalism as well as filmmaking. You've now made a feature that, I mean, as far as I know, the reception has been very, very positive. Everyone I know who's seen it has loved it. And it's obviously we're early in the process of screening it everywhere. What do you feel comes next for you? What would you like to do next?
I would love to make another hybrid. I'm sort of like in the early process, I would say, of the next one. Yeah, I watched the movie and it's interesting. It's like the easiest thing that I've ever made to watch, because I don't feel responsible for the good moments. So it's really easy for me to laugh at something and be like, that was really funny because I didn't write that. Or that's really hilarious. Like, the psychic, like that was like a 1 hour session. Like we booked a psychic and showed up.
that guy is incredible. Unreal.
Unbelievable. I mean, and like the first thing he does is like light her on fire. And we're like, what? Like, this is like so psychotic. I think had I like written that, I might be like, it's a little on the nose.
That's
if
insane.
I written some of these things, I might be like, am I being like heavy handed or so? On the one hand, it's really easy for me to watch and enjoy in that way. But then on the other hand, like all I see are my mistakes. And I would love to have another go at it and like, do a better job.
I'm glad that you brought up the psychic scene because that scene is incredible. You could have told me that was a scene that was written because it's like so insane, everything that's happening there.
Mhm.
Also, again, going back to thinking about the money counter of like she finally got money and she's like, okay, well, is she gonna go like pay off her traffic ticket? No, it's like no, she's gotta go spend $100 on a psychic.
No, totally. She needs a
Great.
little guidance.
Yeah, don't we all sometimes?
Yeah.
Don't we all just gotta get our tarot cards read and
Yeah. And Nathan, she calls her brother afterwards and he's like, you got a fire show, a reading, a cleansing, like all before paying tickets. And like that was really like Nathan's response. Like we were afterwards like talking, and he was like, what? Like that. And I'm like, that again, like that's so funny. But that's like your natural response to your sister is to be like, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah. I do, before we wrap up here, I do just kind of want to talk about like the conclusion, how we are kind of building towards this Omni base, which I'm assuming is a real program that exists in El Paso to this day. That particularly struck a chord with me because we have a little bit of a similar system in the Central Florida area with our toll roads that are everywhere. I don't know if you had the pleasure of going on a Sun Pass or an E-Pass road whenever you took your visit here. But that's another one of those like super predatory programs where a 25-cent toll that you don't have money on your pass for then becomes a $20 bill that you get in the mail. And then if you don't pay that within 30 days, that then becomes a $50 and then becomes 150 and then a court order. And the way that it piles up, and particularly, as Kayla says in the film, it's just like, you want me to go to a court date during like 9 to 5 on a Monday through Friday. That's when I'm working. Like, I don't have time off that I can go do these things. So you mentioned that originally you wanted this to take place during an election cycle. Was this one of those things where like the journalist in you kind of took over, you learned about this program and were like, there's my end to tie the knot on the story, or how did that come about?
Yeah, there was always like a thing of tickets and towing. Like that's unfortunately autobiographical. Um, and my dad, I grew up in San Francisco and I had just been in this nightmare situation trying to help my dad deal with basically the Golden Gate Bridge. Like when I was growing up was like a person and it was $3. And then it was like $5 and there was like riots. And then it was $7 and now it's like $15 and there's no people. It's like all automated. And you have like a fast pass. Anyways, he had somehow like been in a situation where he was like crossing the Golden Gate Bridge every day and like didn't have a fast pass and like paid a few of these tickets, but it spiraled and like all of a sudden he's owing like 15 grand. And, like I am thinking sort of about like his dynamic and like my situation, and my car got towed when I was in college and I thought it was stolen. And by the time I found it, they were like, you had too many parking tickets. It was impounded. You owe like $1 billion. It was a nightmare. And I always I think probably this is like not a helpful way to think about like getting yourself out of a situation. But when I'm in those situations, like I see red and like become irate because I think about, I'm like an articulate, highly educated person. I'm a journalist. All I do is like look and write and think. And I think about my dad in these situations all the time, who doesn't really speak English. I mean, he speaks English, but it's not his first language. It's probably not even his second language. And he works like manual labor all day. And a $50 like incident to him is like life altering. And like, it is, yeah, to me, that's like unacceptable that you would like park in the wrong place and like your life is over. That is like a failure of like democratic like norms. That is like a failure of like people protecting working class people. And, it's like, yeah, I get a parking ticket and it's $75 and I can pay that. And like, it's annoying, but it's not like ruining my life. And that's just not the case for most people. $75 is like, you can't pay it, so you don't. And then that turns into $350. You definitely can't pay that. And that turns into like you're saying, these things spiral. So yeah, in El Paso and in Texas specifically, like Omnibase is one of these things, where you just get fined for traffic violations and they place a hold on your license. Austin voted out of it recently. El Paso is still in it, but you just like look around and you're like, how is this possible? There's like a very subtle line in the diner that I really think is like beautiful and that like was spontaneous, where, she's talking about her tickets and the lady behind the counter is like, did you pay them? And she's like, I can't. And then the guy next to her, he's like an older gentleman, Latino guy, says to her in Spanish, she's like, do you get tickets? And he's like, yeah, of course I get tickets all the time. And she goes, would you pay them? And he says, yeah, I have to, because my license is my life. If I don't have a license, I can't work and I have to work. So of course. And, I didn't need to tell him to say that. Like, that is like his own reality. We didn't need to push it all. Like that was immediately where he went. And he probably doesn't realize like how poignant that point is, but that's just like what it is for people.
Yeah, it's like a bow on the sort of the whole theme. The whole movie, I kept on thinking, I don't remember who said it, but it's like a quote about like class privilege. And it's like, you can tell who has it by who's allowed to make mistakes and who's not. Mm-hmm. Like, and that's,
totally.
And that's why this movie's so cool to me, is because we're watching someone who absolutely makes mistakes, but it's like, well, shouldn't she be allowed to? We all, everyone does. We're humans.
Totally. Someone told me that if the punishment for breaking the law is only money, then they're only interested in punishing poor people. If the punishment for something is not like community service, jail, whatever, and it's only fine based, like that's not real punishment for anybody who can afford it. That's like silly. So yeah, there's a lot of that. It's a fucking nightmare.
Yeah, it's insanely cool that you were able to, zero in on a statement about that while making a comedy like that. It blows the mind to see both at the same time. It's really cool. So
people are funny. I always say like the funniest thing about immigrants are the immigrants. Like my dad, like if you grew up with immigrant parents, like you're laughing at them all the time. Like you are not like wallowing in like some story of like the hardship of their life or like the hardship of how they got to the US. Like as a kid, you're like rolling your eyes, it's like it's like my mom grew up like in like a sort of really difficult situation in England. And, like I can see my brother and I like rolling my eyes when she's like, and I had to go to school in the snow and like I had to walk 4 miles, and we're just like, shut up. We're not like feeling empathy for her. We're like laughing. And so that is sort of like always true. The scene like where they're like getting breakfast with her dad and brother after mass. And she's like, how many emails have I made you? Like that is also just like so immigrant kid. Like you're just like a little adult kind of like helping with like banking and translating and paperwork and like all of these things all the time. Like it's such like a sort of shared experience.
I think that specificity is like kind of what makes the movie, is that those moments, whether it is you or something that Keyla has experienced that you're bringing through to the characters, like that's what really makes this film sing.
Thank you. So. Yeah, I think what feels specific to us is, what ultimately is like completely like enables all connection. Like we all think that these are like really unique experiences to us in your own home growing up. There's not like a bunch of Brazilians in San Francisco. I mean, there's like enough, but it's like I didn't grow up in like a sort of like immigrant community, and like my parents are like really different kinds of immigrants. And I felt like my situation was like really unique and specific. And then the more specific I got, the more I was like, oh, well, this is everyone. This is like not a unique situation at all. This is like America.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of America sometimes, in between all of the tolls and
all the awful
and classism.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I feel like, yeah, we're critical of certain things, but like ultimately the movie is very earnest. And I think I was surprised to make a movie that felt so earnest, because I don't view myself in that way. But I think actually I really am about America. I really like believe in America. I believe in the American experiment. I believe in the possibility that it brings people. And my parents didn't, my dad, for example, didn't come here and like get rich. That's like not what I mean. He came here because he was like living under a dictatorship and he wanted to like sing love songs. And he was like, I can't do that there. He came here for like a romantic, like freedom of like expression, not like to pursue, relentlessly like excellence or any of those things. And, I visit England all the time. My mom's whole family is still there, like they have a class problem. And class is like, you are like under the thumb of your accent. You are under the thumb of where you were born. You better not think about sort of upward mobility. That's like not what's happening. And, in the blink of an eye, I like went to USC. Like I have a totally different life and completely different opportunities to do anything. And I'm not more talented than them. I'm not like smarter or better looking. Like if anything, my parents are like the better versions of me. And, that's like what America really gave them, is like this place where I could do whatever I wanted to do and not be like 16 years old, out of school, and like thinking about like what profession am I going to do? Like that wasn't my life, you know? So I feel, yeah, I feel like, again, like you can't compete with fun, and like you're not going to like beat somebody over the head into like agreeing with what you think like politically. Um, but like I dare you to like watch this movie and not want to be friends with Keyla. You know, it's like not possible. So that was sort of like the MO that I had, you know.
Yeah, I mean, there's just and I feel like you can, even before you said that right there, like I can sense that you are an optimistic person, which as someone who knows a number of journalists, can't say that about every journalist that I know, because whenever you are like living in the days that we live in on a
Yeah.
day-to-day basis on Twitter and everything else, you can kind of uh you can doom scroll yourself to death, or you can kind of look at what what was it about this country, even if it is this romanticized, idealized version of this country, that made people aspire to want to come here in the first place. And I think that that is kind of what sings through your movie,
Totally.
through Kayla or through her parents.
And like my parents, like, I mean, my dad especially like loves America, you know, and you're kind
Mm,
of like,
yeah.
he's critical of it, like totally, but he loves it in this way where you're, you know, you can't really, yeah, you can't argue with like what my life looks like compared to my cousins. Like that's
Mhm.
just, it's
Mhm.
different, you know? And um yeah, that's like from their choice and their sacrifice, really has nothing to do with me, you know. Sort of like the least I could do is like go to college.
All right, Tati. Well, before we wrap up, where can we point people to sort of keep track with the movie on its sort, I guess, path toward wide distribution?
Fingers crossed, you know?
Have you talked with any like distribution companies so far? Is any movement there? Yeah.
Not really. I mean, maybe I'm not supposed to say yes a lot. It's a competitive situation. No, I have no idea. Yeah, we keep, this will sound like bragging, but we keep like, you know, winning these like little awards that we're picking up along, you know, the way at these festivals. And everybody is like, that'll help. And I'm like, it will it? I don't know uh who is looking, but it's a hard time for independent film.
Yeah,
Uh
this is a universal theme from all of our fest coverage is the distribution acquisition process. It sounds like a fucking nightmare.
it's really interesting. Yeah, I find it's interesting. It's like it's sort of like, yeah, the like Hollywood problem, I guess, of like I think people keep waiting to be told something is like good. And I don't know who they're waiting to hear it from, but they need some sort of like pre-validation where the reality of Hollywood is like, this is all a risk. Like, this is art.
Hmm.
And like, we should be the arbiters of like taste and culture, like as artists and studios. I'm not a studio, but, you know, I don't think it's like the audience being like, we need Mission Impossible, you know, but it's like Tom Cruise is like making that. I just rewatched the first Mission Impossible
Yeah.
recently, so it's top of mind. But you're like, that's like Robert Town, and like it's just like unbelievable, you know. And you're just like, yeah,
Hmm.
they told us that this is what we need, and we really enjoyed it. And then we liked it so much they could like be doing sequels, but it wasn't
Right.
like a demand from the world that we needed to see Tom Cruise like as a spy, like, you know. That's
Yeah.
like, but now that seems to be how we do things, you know. It's like Twitter says so and so should be doing whatever.
Well, I
Uh,
think to your point, you're like the art as an artist in an idealized world, it's like, well, I made the movie. Like now it's already done. Your work should be over at this point, and it should be like, okay, on to the next project. But that's kind of the universal thing with indie artists is like it's just making it is only half the battle. It's like I made it and it's good. Okay, cool. Now I got to work on my pitch game. I got to become a salesperson to actually just get somebody to bite on this thing. So
totally. And I think like the silver lining of like this, like being the first project is like I didn't have somebody in my ear being like, actually, we can't cast Kayla. We need to cast Selena Gomez because like she has like more outreach, you know? Like, no, we cast the person who was like right for the thing and like who we can see as a star. And like, I'm not like prescient. I like shot this movie 2 years ago. I've been working on immigration for 10 years. Like, immigration has never been more relevant than like right now. It is, everybody is like, how'd you know? And it's like, it's like a cyclical issue.
Yeah,
And
you start the movie with clips that date back to like the 80s. It's just
Well,
the exact same conversation over and over.
I think people said the same thing about like One Battle After Another whenever that came out last year, and people are like, "Man, how could they have known that ICE was going to be such a big thing?" It's like that's hate to tell you, but the book was written a long time ago, and the story goes back longer than that.
Like Thomas Pynchon wasn't like, again, thinking like what's happening in 2026. It's like
Right.
we're unfortunately, you asked like where people can track this. The film has an Instagram called Valentina Movie, but my production, I run a news company called Frank News, and the bottom line of the like sort of log line, I would say, of the company is like no news is new. We
That's great.
spend months and months on a topic and then move on to another topic in return. So immigration is one of them. I've covered it for 6 months at a time over the last 10 years, like repeatedly. And I think if we're going to be serious, like adults, about what the issues are, we need to like acknowledge that like a lot of the politicking of it is sort of like narrative building and like narrative control of a situation. And like if Democrats can't figure out, I mean, I thought this about like Biden early, but like if Democrats can't figure out how to like get ahead of the narrative on immigration, like they're going to lose.
Mm-hmm.
Fear is like the easiest thing in the world to sell. Like it is not hard and it is not clever. It is like it blows my mind that somebody in Maine is campaigning on border security, or somebody in Ohio is campaigning on border security. Like go to the border. Like it's not a problem, anyways, these things are really like easy to sort of like narrativize and like, you want to talk about them like they're new and like this is crazy, but it's not. It's like a really boring rote conversation. And I feel like a lot of the material that surrounds these conversations, immigration stuff especially, it's all, done in a similar way of sort of like this like focus on trauma and this focus on hardship and
like dead serious stuff, like truly. And there's reason for that to an extent, but yeah, to see
kind of we're exhausted. It's like we're seeing the worst thing you've ever seen every day, just like in an endless scroll. You could just go and go and go. You could pick any country in the world. It's a nightmare because things happen, terrible things happen all the time. But again, like these people's like stories aren't just that one bad thing. Like what a silly way to sort of like think about people and to try to sort of like ingratiate a community like into like understanding who they are. Like I just think it like misses the point. I think again, like I said it earlier, but like you can't compete with fun. Like if you want to hang out with people, you want to hang out with people. These are like people, I mean, that's like kind of all that it is. Like you like them, you understand them, they're your friends, and like all of a sudden your mind is like a little changed and softened about how you think like I should be handling, deportation.
It's just fucking people trying to live their lives.
Exactly. 100%.
For anyone who needs that reminder, they'll get it through the movie. But it also, on top of that,
it's fun. It's like really good. It's a good time.
Exactly. That's what's crazy. It's like supremely entertaining and it's hilarious the whole way through.
Thanks.
So
yeah,
the conversation obviously is different.
You mentioned it earlier, but I do want to give a plug to Frank News. I subscribed to the newsletter as of this weekend, and I was reading some stuff. It's a great website, some really good stuff on there. So definitely would highly recommend if you've listened to all 45 minutes of this interview so far that you go and check that out. Tati, one last question I have for you before we wrap up here. You mentioned Tom Cruise earlier, which is, I could have teed it up perfectly then, but I'm bad at transitions. So we have been asking every filmmaker this question. In addition to covering indie film fests like the Florida Film Festival, covering new releases, We also on our podcast will go back and do actor series where we will go through an actor's entire career, the highs and the lows, the goods and the bads, and talk about it all on this podcast. We recently wrapped up a series on two Toms, Tom Cruise and Tom Hanks. So I have to ask you, who is your favorite Tom?
Tom Cruise.
It's Cruise.
Wow.
There you go.
My favorite Hanks is actually Chet. So I'm a Chet Hanks fan. I know this is Tom Hanks. I'm a fan of Tom, but I prefer Chet. And
Chet is so real. He'd fit in Valentina somewhere.
Yeah, I know,
really
right?
Could be right in there.
He'd be great. I love him. I don't know him, but and Tom Cruise, like I would literally like get in an F-18 and let him fly me around. Like I trust him. I would trust him with my life. I think I'm actually like I don't need to get into his sort of like religion. I was going to say, take me wherever. Like
you got to be careful about the
I don't
personals.
Even think he has like a low. There's like no bad Tom Cruise movie.
What's your favorite?
It's funny because I really was just watching Mission Impossible like a few days ago, and
that first one's an absolute banger.
Yeah.
Oh, good. I mean, Robert Towne. Red
light, green light. Just.
Yes. There's something like kind of like horny about the early Mission Impossibles, which I really like. Like, I feel like they've gotten less and less like sexy or like become like sexless as like they've moved on. But like, they're so like hot. The early ones. I don't know, like Magnolia.
Speaking of sexy.
Yeah.
Impression also like talking about like somebody ahead of the time of like what's happening with men and like where
oh my God.
Go.
He kind of created incels in many ways.
Yeah, he was ahead and on that. I love, I'm trying to think. I don't know. I mean, that there's like the obvious ones, Eyes Wide Shut. I like.
Of course.
I don't know. Yeah. Risky Business, I like.
Wow.
Those
well, you're part of we've got a late surge going for Cruise. Hanks was in a stronghold lead, and we're finally getting some Cruise representation.
That's so interesting. People are just like love like what Tom Hanks movie?
I think it's because also early on we were interviewing a lot of 20 somethings, and they have less of a relationship with Cruise because I think so much of his best stuff was like 80s, early 90s, and I hadn't seen a lot of that until we did our series. And I was like, oh my God, now it's tough for me to make a choice.
We were getting a lot of like Polar Express. And I was like, what are we doing here? And then finally we're getting people like you, some real ball knowers that are coming in here and repping for Cruise. So I think we needed
Polar
to
Express
balance the scales.
Yeah. Forrest Gump. I love Forrest Gump. I'm not mad at Forrest Gump. I'm not mad at like, I feel like I'm gonna misstate the like rom-com season. Anyways, I'm not mad at Tom Hanks, but yeah, I would do anything for Tom Cruise. I love him.
All right, well, Tati, thank you so much for your time. We've taken plenty of it, but Valentina is the movie. We'll keep listeners updated on when they'll eventually be able to find it. Best of luck throughout this whole process. And thank you so much.
Guys so much. I had so much fun talking to you. I really appreciate your time.